you've had a lot of conversations around, Ukrainian solidarity, specifically with Palestinian activists as well, who have drawn those parallels between Palestinians and Ukrainians. And then October 7th. And then this doubling, tripling, quadrupling down from the Biden administration on, supporting genocide with, everything, from rhetoric to weapons. And even saying, in this instance, the oppressed are the Ukrainians in this are the Israelis, is Netanyahu, are the ones who have the warplanes, who have the outsized military, who control the land, sea, air, everything of Gaza. And we're all supposed to just sort of buy that. And it's wild. So my question to you is, does what Biden is doing, does that recast for you? Because for me, I'm thinking like, man, maybe his Ukraine stance is just completely for the war industry and the war machine. Like maybe it's nothing about sovereignty. Maybe fuck Biden on foreign policy. What are your thoughts on that?
So, Biden is who he is. He is not one of us.
Damn.
That's what I think that's really important. We have overlapping interests on certain things, but he's not one of us. So I think once you recognize it, then you can look at the particulars. Biden is also a Zionist. And I distinguish him from Obama, who was not a Zionist, but I think was an opportunist who was looking at the pragmatic needs of U.S. imperialism. Biden believes this stuff, and he has believed it. And I think that we've got to understand that there is an ideological element to what we're seeing within elements of the U.S. ruling group. I mean, some of it is that they're responding just because they're afraid of being attacked by AIPAC. But there's others that are responding because they really believe this ideologically. And it goes back to the very foundation of Israel and what was happening after World War II. But you really see a shift after the Six-Day War in 1967. That's when that opposition to uncritical support for Israel was basically treated as forbidden territory.
Right.
So I think that's what we're seeing there. So it's not, to me, what he's doing does not lead me to say, well, then I've got to criticize him on Ukraine because blah, blah, blah. I don't really care what was motivating him around Ukraine. What I cared about and care about is that the Ukrainians get the supplies to resist.
I think it is really sad because the GOP has a wing that, of course, is in bed with Putin for many different reasons, whether actually financially or just because they are, they love him, who are holding up money to Israel and Ukraine because those things are tied together. They're trying to de-link them, but there's no countervailing force that says, hey, let's hold up money to Israel because actually that's the one where we should be putting the brakes on. There's been some intimation of, hey, maybe we will condition this aid, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Biden's circumventing all that and giving them money. So it also really, I think when it comes to you've analyzed, right-wing populism or faux populism so well. And I think the thing that's stinging for me lately is this lack of a true, progressive or left anti-war push within the party, whereas you actually have, for all the wrong reasons, an anti-war push from the far right in the party.
Well, let me qualify what you just said. There is an element within I call them the ceasefire Democrats.
Right.
Right. And so we've seen this grouping grow, actually, in Congress of Democrats that are willing to step out and say, we need a ceasefire.
Yes.
Now, I think that, so that's great. And that's part of the good news. I think that there remains a lot of confusion within the Democratic Party about Ukraine and about what it means to support the Ukrainian resistance. And so I unfortunately, there's not been the right kind of space, I don't think, to really engage progressive Democrats in Congress around how to understand what exactly is going on in Ukraine and why it is right to get supplies to
Mm.
resist the Russian aggression. The other part of what's going on is what you mentioned, that there really is a Putin wing of the Republican Party. And while there were those that looked at that back in after 2016 as, Trump getting support from Putin, I think what we have to look at is a little bit deeper.
Mm.
That there's a segment, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a perfect example of people that really believe in what Putin is arguing. Putin is a white supremacist. He is a homophobe. He is a misogynist. He's a form of Christian nationalist. And he has said on more than one occasion, he and his allies, that they are standing up for Western civilization.
Right.
So there's a wing of the Republican Party that really embraces this and sees Putin as, sort of the co-godfather of right-wing populism.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I guess I'm just saying, and I agree that the ceasefire Democrats that is a development we would have never seen in years prior had it not been for, the squad growing and whatnot. But there isn't still, there's not a vision, right? The right seems to have a vision of we just don't want any money for foreign wars unless it's on the US-Mexico border. That we're good with,
Or
and
China. Or against
or
China.
Israel, but right, and so I guess I'm just like, there's a ceasefire, which feels like the bare minimum, but there's no actual pull. There's no vision that says this is the future. We don't want to just send weapons to just anyone. All aid should be conditioned, including the aid on Ukraine. However,
Correct.
We believe it's good. We believe in certain measure, whatnot. So anyway,
I agree. I would say that for a number of years, I go back to the Jesse Jackson campaign of 1988 and his way of formulating foreign policy. And I thought that what he articulated then, and pretty much consistently, has been the key elements of a democratic with a small d foreign policy. That is a foreign policy that is non-interventionist, that is supportive of human rights, that attempts to have the United States play the honest broker, when they actually are honest. There are elements there of propping up the United Nations, making the United Nations a more effective vehicle. So I would agree with you that what I have felt for a long time is missing, including within the Congressional Progressive Caucus, is this sort of democratic foreign policy. What is it that we stand for?
Totally.
I just read this piece by Jeff Foe, who was the founder of the Economic Policy Institute years ago. Really good guy. But he wrote this sort of strange piece in The Nation magazine that essentially calls upon the left to become isolationists. And I looked at this, and basically what he's saying is that there really is no good deed that can be done internationally, and we need to focus our attention on what's going on in the United States. And I felt like, no, this is a total retreat. First of all, it's not going to happen, and there's going to be a constant battle around foreign policy. So the question is, where do progressives stand? The idea that we can somehow withdraw and say, the hell with the outside world, we're going to just focus internally, never going to happen. And that kind of advice is really destructive.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it, but yes, the long, sordid, scary history of isolationism in this country, usually aligned with white nationalism. But yes, that we are a far cry from the internationalism of the 60s and 70s, and even, I guess, of, Jesse Jackson's campaign in terms of a vision. And we don't have that vision. And Bernie, our boy, completely left us in the lurch on this one. But let's
because he's never been good on foreign policy.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
going
Exactly.
back to his campaigns in 2016, 2020, in 2016, I was hoping to get involved in his campaign.
Mm,
And part of what I wanted to do was directly around issues of foreign policy,
right.
because Bernie has been really good on domestic issues. When it gets to foreign policy, it's just not him. And I don't know that he's ever had the right advisors. It just doesn't come out right most of the time.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do